Welcome, everyone, to the Global Mindfulness and Education Summit. I'm really excited to introduce you today to one of my favorite authors, Dr. Bradley Nelson, who is the author of the best-selling book, Emotion Code is here, which recently came out with a new edition. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but he is an expert in bioenergetic medicine and energy psychology. So really excited to talk with you today, and thank you so much for coming on the summit.
Well, thank you, Helen. This is, it's so great for me to be here. I'm so grateful for this work that you're doing and grateful to play a part. So thanks for having me on.
Great. So let's start with this word that we keep hearing, trapped emotions. We keep reading, it seems it's a bit trendy in the news and things now, and becoming more, maybe people are becoming more aware that they might have trapped emotions. So what are they, and how do they get trapped in our body?
Well, to understand what a trapped emotion is, you have to understand that your body, even though it seems solid, is actually an energy field. These bodies are almost entirely empty space, really. It's a strange concept, but the body is more of a force field than anything else. I mean, if you look at your hand, it looks pretty solid. But if you were to continually magnify your hand until you got to about 1 million power or so magnification, you'd be looking face to face with a single individual atom. And if you could look inside the atom, you'd see there's really nothing in there, just empty space, some little infinitesimally tiny energies that are zipping around at the speed of light. And that's really what we are. So it's really interesting. In fact, some physicists recently calculated that if you could remove all of the empty space from every individual on the planet, you could fit all of mankind into a little box the size of a sugar cube.
Oh my gosh.
So this is quantum physics. This is the reality of our existence. And so what we have found is that everything really is energy. Our bodies, your house, your car, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, it's all energy. Now, when you're feeling an intense emotion, you're also feeling a certain kind of energy. And it's most useful to look at everything this way, that everything is energy. And what we have found is that every emotion has its own particular vibrational frequency or energy pattern. And so, for example, if you're feeling an emotion of anger, that's a different frequency. It's a different vibration than an emotion of shame, and that's different from grief. And they're all different.
Right.
But when you're feeling an emotion that's very powerful, sometimes, for some reason that we don't quite understand yet, some of that energy may become trapped in the energy body. And so a trapped emotion is literally, if you can imagine, a ball of emotion. Okay. So you can have a trapped emotion, a little ball of anger or resentment or frustration or depression or whatever it might be. And when you have one of these, what happens is that emotional baggage, you might refer to it as, has two effects on the body. A trapped emotion will distort the normal energy field of the body on a continual basis. And so when you're distorting the normal energy field of the body, because that's really all the body is an energy field, ultimately you're interfering with and distorting the physical body itself. And so what happens is we believe that all the chemical reactions taking place within that little ball of energy, and these can lodge literally anywhere in the body, but all those chemical reactions going on inside that little ball of depression or whatever it might be, are affected to some degree, interfered with to some degree. We think that trapped emotions interfere with the flow of energy in the acupuncture meridian system. They may affect blood flow, lymph flow to some degree. And so one of the things that we see is that trapped emotions will ultimately, oftentimes, cause physical pain. In fact, about 90% or more of all the physical pain that people experience is actually due, oftentimes, to their emotional baggage. And we see the results of this because when we remove trapped emotions, physical pain oftentimes just magically disappears. Let me share a story with you. There was
Yeah.
that'll help to illustrate that. There was a man that came in to see me many years ago who had, but I remember this story's popped into my head. He had really severe low back pain, and it was a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. I tested him using the emotion code and found that he had a trapped emotion, a ball of emotional energy in his low back, and the emotion was anger. And it was from about 20 years before, I found, doing the testing. And he said he remembered what had happened. It was a very difficult work situation. He was very upset. That energy was stuck in his low back. Now, when I released that emotion, and by the way, it took about probably a minute to find and identify this and release
Wow.
it. And when I released it, suddenly the pain instantly went from a 9 to a 0. I mean, this fast. And he couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle to him. He kept bending over and
Right.
twisting, and he just couldn't believe it. And I was grateful that it worked so well. So what was going on there? Well, he had this ball of anger in his back, and it was actually distorting the energy field of his body. And that had been going on for 20 years. So finally now he's in terrible pain. But here's the interesting thing. Trapped emotions have another effect on us, and that is that they affect how we feel and how we react to things. And so a couple of days later, this guy came back in to see me, and he said, I still don't have any back pain at all. I still can't believe it. But he said, when I came in here, I had another problem that I didn't tell you about. He said, for as long as I can remember, I've basically been what you'd call a rageaholic. I've got to watch the road rage. I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. He said, I've been to anger management several times, but it hasn't really helped me. He said, I'm just always kind of on edge, and things set me off really easily. But he said, since you released that trapped emotion of anger from me, I feel like a different person. I don't feel it anymore. I just feel kind of relaxed and peaceful. He said, how did that work? And at the time I said, well, I really don't know. But what we believe now is that in his case, he had this ball of anger in his low back. So when a situation would come along in his life where he might tend to feel the emotion of anger, he would feel that emotion much more easily, much more readily than he otherwise would have. Why? Because literally part of his body was feeling that vibration 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a strange concept, but this is what we really believe is true, is that when you have a trapped emotion, that part of your body is vibrating at that frequency. It's literally feeling that emotion. And this is the reason why when we remove trapped emotions, things can change so radically for people, and it changes oftentimes not only how they're doing physically, but also how emotions affect them, long-standing emotional difficulties, tendencies for depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage of all kinds can change overnight. And that's really one of the most exciting aspects of this, besides the fact that emotional baggage, we are finding, is always an underlying cause of the diseases that we suffer from. So in my experience now, and over 31 years as a holistic physician, this is what we are seeing, and what I have personally seen in my own practice for about 20 years, that every disease process that human beings suffer from has an emotional component. Now, Western medicine generally is missing this, but it just makes sense if you think about it. And if you think about any of the people that you have known that have been through something emotionally traumatic and then end up diagnosed, within a year or so or two, maybe with some kind of serious problem, emotional roots are there. So That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting and really exciting that it could be changed so quickly. And I think Western doctors are becoming more curious about these type of things, aren't they?
Yes, they really are. The emotion code is used by many doctors of all stripes, literally all over the world. We have... right now, I think we have around 5,600 or so certified emotion code practitioners in about, 78 countries. And, Many of them are lay people, but many of them are also physicians of all kinds. Okay. And so we're finding that, they're finding that, this actually works. It's very fast, very simple, and yet it can really be life-changing. But the most beautiful thing about it to me is that it's easy enough that children can learn how to do it, and they can use it on other children. Okay. And that's really fun.
Yeah, that's exciting, because I was just going to say that we're reading, and there's a lot of research about so much more, many more mental health issues in schools, children experiencing stress and anxiety, even preschoolers. So tell us a little bit more about that, about how children can start practicing these things, or maybe not even develop these kind of baggage in the first place, and release it while they're still young, not carry it for 20 years.
Right. Yes. Well, the beautiful thing about it is very simple. And kids, of course, as you might imagine, don't have nearly as much emotional baggage as adults. Yeah. It's possible to pick up emotional energy during the time that you're in the womb. That can be found and can be released. Sometimes mom or dad are going through something difficult or traumatic or whatever is going on. The mother's emotions are felt by that baby that's growing in the womb. And sometimes that emotional energy will become trapped in the fetus. And then the baby can be born with emotional baggage. Also, another source of emotional baggage is the emotional energies that we receive at the moment of conception from mom or dad. And we call these inherited trapped emotions. And we really don't have any control over these, but now we can find these energies and release these. And it's not any more difficult than finding a regular trapped emotion. Let me share a story with you. There was a woman that I met at one of our events who told me that she had purchased the Emotion Code book and the book on audio, and she started reading it and listening to it. And her son started reading it and listening to it, and he started practicing it and practicing with his friends. And she didn't pay too much attention. A couple of weeks go by, and one day the phone rings. And she picks up the phone, and there's a woman on the other end of the phone line who identifies herself as the mother of one of this woman's son's friends. Okay. And she says, your son has been doing this emotional thing. And she said, I have to tell you something. She said, my son has a severe phobia of water that he's had all of his life, and we've tried everything to fix it. We've taken him to everybody. It's been very disruptive to his life and to our life as a family, as you might imagine. She said, nothing has ever worked. And we have just gotten to a point where we've resigned ourselves to him having to deal with this for his whole life. But she said, I'm at the community pool right now. And she said, my son is out playing in the water for the first time in his entire life with the other boys. She said, your son did this. She said, I can't even wrap my mind around that this is even real. What in the world is he doing? Now, those two boys are only 11 years old, see? So here's a boy, 11 years old, learned the emotion code on his own, just from the book, from the audio book and so on, and then started practicing with his friends, and then works on his friend, finds a trapped emotion that probably, I would suspect, since he'd had it all of his life, probably what happened was he got delayed maybe in the birth canal or something, and maybe thought he was going to drown or something. I don't know. That could have been that. But that emotional energy was, who knows, it might have been terror or something. That created the phobia of water. And then his friend was able to release it. Probably took a minute or two, and boom, the phobia is gone. But that's the real beauty of this, you see, is that people can learn this, they can do it themselves, and it's simple enough that kids can learn how to do it. Imagine what a different world we could have in 10 years if there were enough kids in the world using this method. Because you see, what happens to us is we pick up emotional baggage, we develop trapped emotions, and those emotions all have an effect on us. They all have the effect of diminishing our lives and misdirecting us so that choices that we would make, that would be better choices, we don't make because our baggage is kind of continually pushing us towards the lower choices, towards lower vibrations. And so imagine what a different world it could be. Eventually we're going to get there. So that's why I'm so excited to be on your show today, because this is what we have to do. We've got to get this message out to the kids and get their hands on this material.
Yeah, I think it's so important to change what's happening in education. I work in quite a few countries, and I just see that stress and anxiety getting worse, and more pressure and testing and no playtime and and things like that. So I think kids are developing more and more stress. So can you tell us a little bit more about how to clear these emotion blocks?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's critical to understand that we don't consciously know what emotional baggage we have. We may consciously suspect that certain things we've been through have probably left us with baggage, but the only way to find emotional baggage is by tapping into the subconscious mind. So we all have these two minds, okay? Our total intelligence can be divided up into the conscious mind, which is where we spend all of our waking hours, where we study things and we analyze things and we make our decisions and so on. That's where we are, all of our waking hours. But then the subconscious mind is vastly larger. And in fact, I believe that the conscious mind is much less really than 1% of our total intelligence. So much more than 90% of our total intelligence is subconscious. Now, the subconscious mind, on the other hand, is the part of us that is remembering everything we've ever done, every face you've ever seen in a crowd, everything you've ever eaten, tasted, touched, smelled. The subconscious mind remembers all of those things. It remembers and knows what emotional baggage you have. It knows what that emotional baggage is doing to you. If you're dealing with any kind of a mental, physical, or emotional problem, the subconscious mind knows what the underlying reasons are. Most of those reasons are due to emotional baggage. And so what we have to do the emotion code, to find that emotional baggage, the only way to do it is to tap in to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is this almost infinite database of intelligence. It knows if you, for example, developed some trapped emotions during the time that you were in the womb. It knows if you inherited some emotional energy at the moment of conception from mom or dad. It knows how many generations back that goes. It's really an amazing thing. How we tap into the subconscious mind is by using muscle testing. So we don't require people to buy any kind of equipment or anything like that. It's very simple. And we teach a number of different methods of muscle testing. We teach in the book and in the other materials how you can muscle test other people. So for example, if I were there with you, Helen, I could have you hold your arm straight out like so. And kids love this, by the way. They love this one.
Yes.
You can hold your arm out parallel to the floor. And if I were to have you make a statement, like if you were to say, "My name is Helen," your arm would be strong on my downward pressure. If you were to say something incongruent or untrue, like "My name is Helen," or "My name," let's see, that would be true. "My name is Joanne," for example. If you were to say that, that would be an incongruent statement. And if I were to press down on your arm at that moment, your arm would go down. Kids love this because you have to try this on their
fun. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's essentially what's going on. You see, when you say something that is true or congruent or positive, your body will be stronger. If you say something that's incongruent or untrue or negative, the body will be slightly weaker for about maybe 5 or 6 seconds. During that little gap, if we test the body, we can actually we can discern that, because the body will be weaker if the answer coming from the subconscious mind is no, and it will be stronger if the answer is yes. So this is how we do it. And we teach various different methods of self-testing. This is called the ring and ring method. The rings will tend to stay together on yes and break apart on no. We teach a method that looks like this, where you can test with one hand, and the bottom finger will stay up for yes, and it will drop for no. And, you know, the amazing thing about this is I've taught seminars all over the world. I just got back from Europe. We did seminars in Bucharest, in Switzerland, in Germany, in the UK. But what's fun is that when we have children there, they are always able to pick up on this testing right away. For adults, it takes a little bit longer. It's a little bit more of a skill that they need to develop, which can take a week or two. But kids pick it up immediately. And that's why it's fun for us to work with kids. It's just so easy for them. And they get it right away. So basically, if you can imagine, I'll give you an idea of probably how this went with this little boy and his friend, okay? Having written the book and knowing that he read the book and then used it on his friend, here's probably what happened. He probably asked his friend to hold out his arm. Let's imagine that the friend with the phobia's name is Stuart. He probably said, Stuart, say your name is Stuart. And Stuart said, my name is Stuart. And then he pressed down on that outstretched arm, and it was probably strong. And then he probably simply asked a question like, do you have a trapped emotion we can release that's contributing to this phobia of water? And in response, when he pressed down on his friend's arm, it was probably strong. And that was his subconscious mind saying, yeah, I do have a trapped emotion that's contributing to my phobia of water. Now, at that point, then we have a chart of emotions. There are 60 emotions in the chart. It's divided into 2 columns and 6 rows. And so then at that point, what he would have done is he would have said, well, let's say that the trapped emotion, we'll say maybe it was panic or something. I think that's in column B. He would have said, is the emotion in column A, and Stuart's arm would have gone down, would have been weak. So that would have meant the emotion is in column B. And then he would have asked, well, is it in one of the odd rows? Yes. Is it in row 1? No. Is it in row 3? No. Row 5, he would have gotten a yes. And then at that point, he would have just gone through the emotions one at a time until he got to that emotion. I don't know what the emotion was, but if it was panic, he would have gone strong on panic. And then at that point, he probably would have asked, do we need to know anything else about this? And the subconscious mind will sometimes make you dig a little deeper before it will allow an emotion to be released. So he might have needed to figure out how old he was when this occurred, and it might have been at birth or who knows. But at a certain point, when he asked, do we need to know more about this, the subconscious mind would have said no. And then at that point, what he would have done is used his fingertips or his hand or some kind of a magnet, and he would have just gone right down the middle of his back, probably 3 times, to release that trapped emotion. Kind of like taking a credit card out of your wallet and rubbing a magnetic strip on the, rubbing a magnet on the magnetic strip. It just erases the data. And that's how this works. It's just that simple. And so most people can find and remove a trapped emotion within about 60 seconds once they learn how to do this.
Wow, amazing. And so tell us a little bit more about the different courses that you have, because I think you just started a course for youth as well, right? To train youth to do this in schools as well.
Well, what we're doing is we're working to get into the schools to get this methodology more recognized.
Okay.
Yes, and we're working in various aspects of that, and that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be on your show. Mm-hmm. We have certification programs for adults. Okay. You do need to be legal age. And so, but we have online courses. We have an online certification course. It's a 6-month course. Most people do it in about half that time. The record is about 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks actually, right. Where you have to work on 30 individuals and go through, you watch the videos and take the quizzes and take the final exam, and you learn how to do the process. And then 4 of those individuals that you work with have to actually be animals, because this also works with animals. And we want all of our practitioners to have that experience of working with animals, because if you work on more than 1 or 2 animals, you're going to have some really fun experiences. Most of the problems that animals have with either physical, some kind of a physical problem like lameness or something, or some kind of behavioral problem, pretty much always due to trapped emotions. So when you remove the trapped emotions, you'll see amazing things happen. So we want all of our practitioners to have that experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what about the other side, the joyful and happy emotions, gratitude? How can we cultivate more of those in ourselves and in students in schools?
Well, here's how I look at this. To me, I believe that we come into this world as pretty much pure vessels, pure energetic vessels. Now, sometimes we are inheriting some baggage. You can think of the trapped emotions that we end up with as being like little dark clouds of energy in that energy body of ours. And so the more of those we can get rid of, then the more we come back to this state of being this pure energy body. And the more trapped emotions we get rid of, the easier it is for us to ascend in our vibration, the easier it becomes to feel those positive emotions like unconditional love and gratitude and peace and so on. And it's just so fascinating. We've had so many people in so many parts of the world who have told us things like they didn't know what it felt like to feel the emotion of love until they had enough of that baggage removed. And of course, the most important part of the emotion code, really, which we haven't even touched on yet, has to do with the heart.
Yes.
And
heart walls.
Yes,
Yeah.
the heart wall. Exactly right. So let me touch on that for a minute.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 1960s, when doctors started first doing heart transplants, it didn't take long before patients would come back and relate strange goings on to their doctors. They would talk about how they had sometimes had memories of being in places that they never in their lives had visited. Like, doctor, I don't know how I know this, but I have memories of being in Rome. I've never been to Rome in my life. How is that possible? Or they would say, you know, my taste in music has changed. I used to love, rock and roll. Now I totally love classical music since I got my heart transplant, and certain passages I'm going over all the time. Why is that? Taste in food would change. Sometimes handwriting itself would change. And in every case, when these people were taken back to the family of the donor, the heart donor, they would find out, oh yes, that's our son's handwriting that you have. How crazy is that? Or they would find out, yes, our daughter was a concert violinist. That must be why you love classical music now. Or, well, our son went to Rome. How you have his memories? How strange is that? It's crazy. Well, there are whole books written about this, right? It's called cellular memory. Fascinating thing. The ancient societies believed that the heart was the seat of the soul, the source of love and creativity, and the source of romance, and really the core of our being. And in the West, we've never paid any attention to those old ideas, you see. We've all just thought, well, that's just poetic license on the part of those ancients. I mean, you look at the Bible, the word heart is mentioned just shy of 1,000 times. Well, is that poetic license, or what's really going on? Well, we have instrumentation now that is starting to show that those ancient civilizations were right. At the heart, it appears really truly is a second brain. In fact, a number of years ago, scientists were looking at the nerve transmission between the brain and the heart. There are nerves that carry transmissions between the brain and the heart. They were looking at those, and they were looking to see how many communications on average were going between the brain and the heart. And they were expecting to see most of the communications going from the brain to the heart, and maybe once in a while, they might get one from the heart back to the brain. Instead, what they found was the vast majority of all the messages between the brain and the heart were actually traveling from the heart to the brain. In other words, your heart is telling your brain what to do, and your brain is obeying the messages sent by the heart. And the heart really is a second brain. It's full of gray matter and white matter, and that wasn't even discovered until the 1970s. So it's a fascinating thing. Well, when you feel like your heart is going to break, if mom and dad are arguing, or maybe you're being bullied at school, or maybe someone dies, we all go through these emotional events. What can happen is your heart can feel like it's going to break. And that's a physical sensation. And it's universal to mankind. Every society in the world has words for this, the words that we use, like heartache and heartbreak. Think of the word heartache. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Well, literally, your heart can ache, can't it?
Yeah.
And people that have been through this know what that feels like. If you feel like your heart's going to break, it can feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest, or like you can't breathe, like you're choking. And so what's happening there is that if you're really feeling hurt or wounded or abused in some way, your heart is under assault. The heart, I believe, is the seat of the subconscious mind. And so when it's under assault like that, it really is the core of your being that's being assaulted. And so the subconscious mind itself will put up a wall around that heart. And that wall is a wall of energy made from the layers of your emotional baggage. Not all of it, just some of it. But to give you an idea, one of the first people that I saw, an example of how this can affect you as an adult, there was someone that came in to see me many years ago, right after this was, we made this discovery. It was really shown to us from up above. It wasn't anything that I ever would have, in my wildest dreams, have imagined. But there was a woman that came in to see me. She was really having some serious neck pain. She'd seen a couple of other doctors for her. They hadn't been able to help her. So she came in to see me. And as I'm talking with her, she tells me that she's a nurse. She's 38 years old. And she is single. She hasn't dated in 8 years. She's never going to date again. And she was an attractive person. And I said, well, why do you feel this way? I mean, why would you feel this way? What happened to you? She said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy who dumped her and broke her heart, she said. And so I tested her and found she had this heart wall phenomenon, this invisible energy field, like a force field around the heart to protect her heart from being ever broken again. And so I released the 3 emotions making up this wall. And all of a sudden, when the last emotion was gone, suddenly her neck pain was instantaneously gone completely. And so she felt great. She was excited. She left the office, didn't come back for 3 months. When she came back, I'll always remember this. I looked at her and I said, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? She said, my neck has been fine since I was here, but she said, you released that heart wall from me, and that really worked. She said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years, and we're dating, and we're in love, and I think he's going to ask me to marry him, right? So this is the kind of shift that happens when that wall is taken down. People are able to feel love sometimes for the first time. Sometimes people are able to feel love from that higher power for them. I believe that within every single one of us is a perfect blueprint of what our life can be. That blueprint lies within our heart. So when we have a wall around the heart, it becomes much more difficult for us to manifest that blueprint, you see. Now, the beauty of this now is that the technology is there. The emotion code is so simple, people can learn how to do it themselves and release their own emotional baggage. And there you go.
Yeah, that's amazing, and the stories about the heart transplants are so powerful, right? Just to show you how much we're still learning about the human body and how everything works. So yeah, really exciting. So I know you work all over the world with different people. So I guess this is a universal process that humans everywhere experience. Do you notice any different kind of cultural emotions that get blocked in certain cultures, or does it really just depend on the individual person and what they've been through?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, for example, if there is sometimes inherited energies that are more common. For example, when I go from Germany doing a seminar and I go to Switzerland doing a seminar, you know, the Swiss were neutral in World War I and II, and their cities weren't flattened and so on, and they don't have all of this collective guilt that the German people do. So I go to Germany a lot, teaching them how to remove that emotional baggage so that eventually they can get out from under this cloud of collective guilt that is over everyone there. But other than that, it's an interesting thing, but it seems like we are pretty much the same wherever we go. We all experience ups and downs. We all end up with emotional baggage. And the great thing is that it's easy to start getting rid of this baggage. The problem is the more emotional baggage you've accumulated, the more you'll tend to accumulate. So because it tends to attract more of those same kinds of things into your life. Sometimes we have emotional baggage from something that we've been through, and our baggage itself can resonate with someone else's baggage. And then we end up in a relationship with somebody because our emotional baggage is attracted to, their emotional baggage. And so that can create dysfunctional relationships. We see that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. Oh, really, really interesting. Well, just before we end, do you have any last message for all the teachers that are watching, and probably lots of parents too? What would be maybe like the first step they can take to learn more about this?
Well, you can download the Emotion Code app on for your phone. It's free. And you get the first couple of chapters of the book there that you can listen to. We have a new version of the book that's just come out where we have a whole new chapter on inherited trapped emotions and how to get rid of that. What I can guarantee you is that the children in your classroom or the kids in your family have emotional baggage. And we have seen families all over the world, regardless of race, regardless of country, doesn't make any difference. We've seen families that have undergone radical shifts where families have gone from no one's getting along and it's just a constant battle and constant contention to smoothly running families where everyone is getting along and the spirit of love is there, and it can just change things so much. If you're a teacher and you've got kids in your classroom that are having behavioral difficulties, kids that are dealing with depression and all kinds of problems, I'm telling you, this method can radically change them, and it often does not take long at all. We typically see changes take place within 24 to 48 hours with kids, and it can just be mind-blowing. But the technology is simple. We're living in the 21st century now. This is all about quantum physics. Many physicians around the world have said the future of healing is energy medicine. The future of energy medicine is the Emotion Code, because there's nothing faster, nothing easier, nothing that is so simple that children can learn how to do this and do it very effectively, very quickly. So
great. That sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to remind everyone, we've got some great freebies from Dr. Nelson, which you can find at the link below, and his books and websites and courses are in the speaker bio if you click that button. But thank you again for sharing all that fascinating and exciting information with us today on the summit.
Thank you so much, Helen, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share this information.
Great, thanks.